Welcome to the Art of Intelligence, where we decode the future of AI. One story, one use case, and one bold idea at a time. I'm your host, Barlas Yuce, inviting you to join me and industry leaders as we explore how artificial intelligence is reshaping our world from the boardroom to the classroom and beyond. Whether you're an innovator, a skeptic, or just AI curious, this is the front row seat to the real conversations, practical insights behind the buzzwords. Let's paint the bigger picture together. Today, we have a fantastic guest, which I know a lot of people are going to be very excited to hear. I know the first time I heard this person speak at an event, my mind was blown. Today, we have Amit Singh, AI go-to-market expert, formerly of AWS. Amit, thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Barlas. Great to be here.
Fantastic. Before we get started, I have a question that I'm going to ask you. I asked this of all of our guests. If money and time were no object, what would be your dream vacation? And it could be with or without kids, because I know you do have a family.
Oh, that's a good one. Just let me think. So I love beers, but I think one place that I would like to go to, again, this is probably nothing to do with money, but something that I would like to go and do is probably visit Scotland and do like a whiskey tour. So besides beer, I also love single malt. So would love to go and do a tour of different distilleries across Scotland that manufacture or produce some of the single malts that I like. So pretty much in that region within Scotland where like Islay region and like Highlands, right? So where a lot of whiskey production happens. So would love to go out, maybe spend like a week, 2 weeks, tasting whiskeys from different distilleries and just trying out and just understanding how these whiskeys are made, why they are so popular, how they age them and everything. So that would be something that I have in the back of my mind that I want to do try at some point.
Oh, you are a man after my own heart. And you said Islay. Man, are you a peaty guy? Do you like the peaty Scott?
More of a Highlands whiskeys. Yeah.
I do like Highlands and I love Scotch. Scotch is like my weakness. I would be right there with you. I am happy. One of these days we need to get a boys trip together for a bunch of guys in tech because I hear this so often and I really would love to do it too. I'd like to learn how they make the Scotch, how it gets put together and understand a little bit more about how the fermenting process works. So yeah, I'm right there with you. Because I know we have limited time today, if you don't mind, can you give me a little bit of a background on yourself? Where did you come from? What have you done and where are you going?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm originally from India, and typical like initial part of my career was like typical Indian engineer, graduated as an electronics and communications engineer, worked with Tata Consultancy Services. But I always had an itch to go to business side of things. I was not so much into technology. Even during my engineering days, I would go out to the management college and read more of like management and strategy books. So always wanted to do an MBA. So went and did my full-time MBA after working at Tata for a while. Then after that, I worked with Thomson Reuters, which is into providing data and software for professionals. Did a bunch of sales strategy, go-to-market work with them. Then from there on, I had the opportunity to join Microsoft. And with Microsoft, I spent mostly managing their services business, particularly around offerings like managed application services, designated customer engineering. And then I got into data analytics and AI ML and was the business strategy lead for the customer success team within Microsoft. And from there on, I was hired as a BD for Amazon SageMaker, which is AWS's machine learning service. And then I was responsible for pretty much setting up the entire partner ecosystem for generative AI services when AWS announced Amazon Bedrock and Amazon Q. So I was part of the core team that pretty much set up the initial partner motion all the way from enablement, build, go-to-market, and co-sell. And I'm recently transitioning to another company. More to come on that. But that's been my journey. Been around in the data analytics and AI ML space for a while and have been working in go-to-market primarily all of my time since the post MBA days. And I'm super excited about what is coming next for me. I really enjoyed the journey so far, and hopefully the next role would be a super relevant one as well, given that we are so early in the AI journey.
Wow. What a story. So, from India to Seattle with love, and AWS being a big integral part of that, Thomson Reuters, a bunch of other companies. It's just really exciting. I watched you speak at our event that we had a year ago, and it really opened my mind to AI. Even though I worked at an AI company and I know what Gen AI is and I know how it works and where it can innovate things, some of the use cases you were talking about were really blowing my mind at the time, and it really got me more excited about even creating this podcast. So thank you for that. I do have a couple questions that I'd like to ask, if that's okay. And one of the questions that I know, with the rise of agentic AI, with all the different companies saying they have AI, but really only having an AI membership and telling their employees to use it, but not really having very much direction. With the rise of agentic AI, how should go-to-market teams like adapt their structures and processes to maximize the value of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're right. Like, I think a lot of companies are saying that they are AI ready companies, but ultimately, like, there are very few organizations or enterprises out there that have actually put AI to a really relevant use case and something that they've deployed in production that they're actually gaining value out of. There have been instances where customers have put something into production and then they have to walk back on that. We have a couple of examples like that, if those are like particularly more prominently visible. Again, not necessarily with AWS, but like in general, you may have heard about some of the stories in the market overall. But to your question, agentic AI is really the future, right? And companies can start to derive the value from agentic AI when they really make agentic AI part of the workflow that their employees are using. So there are like two ways to think about agentic AI. One is as an augmentation to your own workforce, right? And there has been a lot of talk about, for example, like Salesforce has come up with Agent Force. So you can think of like agentic AI or AI agents really as something that scales your workforce, right? So limited number of resources or investments, right? You can have these resources designed and work for you and go through your systems and processes and take care of those workflows without getting tired. They can work around the clock, right? So basically everything that like a machine can do, but more of an intelligent manner, right? Robotic automation has been there for a while now, but where agentic AI really changes the game is it brings a little bit of intelligence and reasoning and planning, some of those capabilities that make it a bit more, I won't say human-like, but at least starts to help you get and take care of some of the more complex use cases and tasks, which otherwise you would not be able to do with more routine-based automation that was pretty much the bread and butter for robotic automation. So here you can have the agents plan and think about a problem, break down the problem into chunks and come up with a solution. So that's one way. The second way to think about agentic is like really in the sense that it's there to support the end of employees, right? So when employees are working through their day-to-day workflows, they can use agents to, sometimes it can be through prompting. In some cases, it can be based on certain triggers that the user has set up, and that can help improve the productivity of that individual. That could be in a work setting. It could also be in a personal setting where, let's say, you create an agent that helps you book tickets for yourself or helps you plan out certain itineraries for yourselves. So those are some of the examples that I think when once they are actually put into use, that's when employees as well as individuals and like overall enterprises can start to gain maximum value out of agentic AI.
A great answer. I know that you have things that you can't always talk about, maybe something that you've seen online or an idea that you've heard of where you can share a story where maybe a go-to-market strategy for Gen AI has made a measurable difference for an end customer?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the stories that comes to my mind is AWS. So DoorDash, as you probably have heard of them, use them, and maybe ordered food from them. They build a generative AI contact center solution using some of the AWS generative AI services, such as Amazon Bedrock, and using cloud models from Anthropic. And they also used AWS's contact center as a service, Amazon Connect. And this may seem like a pretty standard kind of use case or an example of AI, but it is actually, like, from a contact center transformation perspective, that's probably the number one or number two use case of generative AI in the initial phases. So what the DoorDash did was basically transform their entire contact center using more of self-service methodology, wherein they were able to increase testing capacity by almost 50 times. They reduced the latency by 50%, latency of the responses, because as Dashers, their own employees as well as their own customers, are contacting the DoorDash's contact center, you want that conversation or that issue resolution to happen almost in real time. So latency is of super importance. And if you know anything about generative AI, right, one thing that you would know is that sometimes these tokens may take some time to generate. And so making sure that latency is taken care of is really important for more of real-time use cases, which is very much relevant in a contact center setting. So they were able to reduce the latency by 50%. They were also able to get the response latency down to almost about 2.5 seconds or less using Anthropic's Cloud 3 Haiku. And this is one of their large language models. And then just to give you this sense of the scale, they were able to save almost, I believe, $3 million as part of doing this contact center transformation work. And this contact center solution, which was pretty much like a generative AI solution, took care of almost 100,000 calls per day. So you can think of the scale. DoorDash is now a really large company. So they were able to do this for hundreds and thousands of their customers, dealing with like that kind of a call volume, which is substantial. And by doing this, they were also able to reduce the overall deployment time by 50%. So as you can see, across the board, massive amount of savings, whether it is in terms of cost or superior customer experience, more first-time resolution of issues, as well as faster of a lower latency.
What a great use case. That sounds really fantastic and some great numbers there. Thank you so much for that. We've come to the part of the podcast that we talk about what is a unique use case that you can talk about that you think is going to help humanity, maybe business, however, but whatever you think is really interesting to talk about during the podcast, which is the basis for this podcast.
Yeah, I think one of the use cases that I think would be like both from an AI perspective as well as like thinking about agentic AI. One thing that I think now it is starting to come to what do you call, like, people are really starting to look into it is around data engineering, right? So data engineering as a field has been, it's very like intensive in terms of the expertise required, right? You need people who know data engineering, data science, and who have been previously data practitioners. So for them who are actually dealing with large scale data, big data, doing like analytics workloads, I'm thinking of, is there a way to create what we call as data engineering agents, right? And these data engineering agents can do different things depending on the persona. So these can be set up to, for example, troubleshoot and optimize the data pipelines. And these data pipelines, depending on the size of the workload that customers may have, can run into thousands of jobs that these data pipelines have to process on a daily basis. So can data engineering agents be designed that can augment or potentially help scale the capacity of data engineers or data practitioners that an organization has, right? You can also think about these data engineering agents to be able to scale on demand, be able to take care of tasks that are pretty much like from data wrangling, data pre-processing, and these could be for n number of use cases, right? One of the key challenges that we hear with regards to one of the key blockers when it comes to generative AI adoption or lack of generative AI adoption or challenges around generative AI adoption has been the data quality or organizations not having the right data strategy in place. And a lot of that comes down to not having the necessary or right expertise within the organization, right? So if data engineering agents can be designed that can take care of some of these tasks that data engineers would otherwise be spending their efforts on, and these tasks are some where a lot of data engineers, or even in some cases, machine learning engineers as well as data scientists, do not like to spend their productive time on, right? Some of those tasks, if these data engineering agents can take care of and automate, these could include monitoring the data quality, right? It could include driving data transformation, managing and creating net new pipelines, net new databases. I was just looking at a stat where one of the databases, which is a new database company, Neon, they are seeing that a lot of the databases are being created by AI agents. Almost 80% of the overall databases are being created by AI agents compared to only 20% being created by humans. So if these data engineering agents can take care of these kind of tasks, and then data engineers can focus on more on tasks that are really appealing to them and where they would like to spend more of their time on, tasks that require a little bit more of intellect that some, for example, the current capabilities of large language models cannot take care of. I would like to see those data engineering agents come to fruition. And I think there is a lot of value once these agents can be designed in the right way and deployed in the organizations at scale. Because not only it will take care of some of the things that these data engineers had to do previously, but it can help the organizations get to grips, get to implement data strategy at a much faster pace. And that's when they would be really well positioned to deploy AI use cases and multiple of these AI use cases at scale once these data needs are taken care of. So I think that's one use case I can think of where there is a lot of potential value that remains to be unlocked.
Wow, what a great use case. Sounds like you might have a potential idea that you need to create so you can be the next AI billionaire and get this
I
out
don't know
in
about
front
that,
of
but yeah, I think that'd be cool if some company can create that. I'm sure like there are a lot of companies that are into the big data analytics, like the Databricks, Snowflakes of the world, even like AWS, Google, and Microsoft. I'm sure they were probably looking into creating something like this. But yeah, if some startup can create that, I think that would be a killer product for data engineers.
Excellent. I do have a final question for you. So if you could possibly answer this one for me, that would be great. Where do you see this AI go to market going? What is best in class going to look like in 5, 10 years?
Yeah, that's a hard one to predict. But I feel like if you look at where we are today, we are fairly in early stages of AI adoption in general. And particularly, I think the early adoption has been happening around more of internal facing or like use cases that are pretty much like internal to an organization, those kind of settings. I think with go to market, which is pretty much like an externally facing function, I think there is a lot of adoption happening. There are a lot of net new tools coming out. I've been writing about AI agents quite a lot. There are agents of all different types and sorts that have been created. For example, there are AI SDRs. There are those, I don't think they have been particularly successful, but there are a few companies that are succeeding and they deal with both inbound and outbound. There are AI agents being created for different phases of the sales cycle, all the way from prospecting and qualification, all the way to building out and creating like an RFP response, right? And like even for sales engineers and even different, not only the different phases of sales cycle, but also different personas involved. For example, I heard about companies that are looking at sales engineers or even in some cases like more of solution architects or technical sales specialist kind of roles, right? And trying to come up with the agentic form for that, right? What would that look like? So that if a seller is going through a sales process and they need a demo or they need certain technical questions answered, they have these agents handy that can help unlock or unblock them as part of that sales cycle, right? And they don't necessarily have to rely on a human being as part of that conversation. So I think some of those things are starting to take shape already, and I'm focusing more on the sales cycle. But then if you move up the funnel as well, AI has been really changing the what is possible with demand generation as well as creating content strategies, for example, right? A single human being with the right set of agents can now create multiple campaigns, run those campaigns automate in an automated manner, and get to the leads at the end of it. And then maybe even have someone take care of those qualified leads as part of the qualification process and the stages further down the funnel. So I feel like AI overall, as well as AI agents specifically, can play an increasingly important role in the entire go-to-market lifecycle. And we are starting to see a lot of these tools being created in pockets. I think what would be good to see is when all of these AI, GTM, tech stacks comes about, and then these agents or these different technologies or tools from different vendors, or maybe from one vendor, right? Depending on who is the provider, when they come together and are operating like in a seamless manner, right? So that you're providing the superior customer experience to your customers all the way from when they initially learn about you, all the way through getting the contract signed. But also it is seamless for your enterprise resources, whether it is the marketing department, the sales function, or even, for example, like partner and customer success functions. So I feel like that would be an ideal stage where we would like to see these agents coming together and working in tandem in a pretty seamless fashion. But I feel like we're just seeing some of these things come into bits and pieces already. At the end of it, I think if someone can put this together and create that sort of like a collective view of how these different technologies fit and interact with each other, that is where we'll see the real improvements, efficiency gains, as well as the scaling of GTM function overall with fewer resources and more of technology and more of AI agents.
Fantastic. Great answer. You definitely do not disappoint when it comes to podcasting. I think we were coming to the end of our time together today. Is there anything you wanted to add?
No, yeah, I enjoyed this conversation, Barlas. Thanks for setting this up. And yeah, I'm always available.
Whenever you start with the next thing that comes up, I'd like to have you come back and talk about that as well. You always have an open invitation to speak at a podcast. I really enjoy talking with you. You're a very knowledgeable person, and I've always learned things every time we talk. Good talk.
All right, cool.